What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Jay Rich here to talk some NFL player props over on PrizePicks for Week 12. There's a lot of games I do like, some correlative plays that I will be playing on multiple slips. So let's dive into it right now, starting with my number one play. Maybe not my number one play, but a play I do really like from the quarterback position. Let's talk about Joe Burrow. 275.5 passing yards. You know, you're thinking, well, Jamar Chase has already been ruled out, so it'll be T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Hayden Hurst, Samaje Perine up against the Tennessee Titans, who have one of the best run defenses in the NFL. As you can see right here, they are bottom of the list in terms of yards, rushing yards allowed per game. 44. That's it. That's all they've allowed since Week 7. 44 rushing yards per game since Week 7. They have been phenomenal. And then if you flip that over to the passing yards allowed per game, and they are near the top. 270 passing yards per game. So on average, they're allowing basically what Joe Burrow's line is. And that alone, I already like a lot. But Joe Burrow has also killed bad defenses this year. He's got a 400-yard game versus Atlanta. He's got two 300-yard games versus the Steelers. He's got a 300-yard game versus New Orleans. What do these teams all have in common? They are all bad defenses. They're all near the top of the list in passing yards per game each and every week. Even on the season, they're not good. And so that's why I do like Joe Burrow to go over 275. I understand the concerns of Jamar Chase not playing, but T. Higgins, who also I may talk about a little bit as more of a flex play, I do like quite a bit. Higgins is a guy who is moving on the books right now. If you were to go look at T. Higgins' line, you would see it anywhere from 70-ish all the way up to 82 if it's still out there for T. Higgins. That was actually courtesy of BetMGM. They bumped his line up quite a bit. Yeah, they still have it at 82.5 receiving yards ever since Jamar Chase has been ruled out. As you see, PointsBet still has 70.5, 71.5, 72, and then BetRivers has moved up all the way to 74.5. I could see this line continue to move in Higgins' favor towards the over. That's the reason why I do like it on PrizePicks. You were getting it basically at the lowest common denominator right now, and so for that reason, I do like it. Tennessee Titans do allow a lot of yards to wide receivers, and so that's the main reason why you want to target them. You see right here, 7th most receiving yards to wide receivers, 168. Higgins has been phenomenal. He had a great week last week. I think he will continue to do it this week. If you want to stack Burrow and Higgins, I'm all for it. I think they're going to completely abandon the run in this one. Straight up, I don't believe they're going to run the ball hardly at all. The biggest mistake a lot of teams make is they try to establish it against the Titans. Honestly, you're just wasting downs at this point if you're trying to run with a subpar rushing game against the Tennessee Titans. Yeah, Samaje Perine can maybe break off a big run here or there. Obviously, he can do damage in the receiving game. We saw him have a great week last week. But overall, I expect Burrow to be in shotgun, drop back, pass a bunch of times. I think that's great for Boyd, great for Higgins, great for Hurst, great for all the pass catchers that we love in this offense, and most importantly, great for Joe Burrow to go over 275.5. His line was around 277.5, 280.5, and that was even before Jamar Chase was ruled out. Jamar Chase was ruled out, it adjusted a little bit, and still hasn't really moved a ton, and so that for that reason, I'm kind of with the odds makers on this. You see DraftKings dropped their line a little bit, BetRivers dropped a little bit, but 275.5, still very reasonable. FanDuel has not wavered, 279.5, no real concerns for them. I don't think it makes much of a difference. The real factor here is not so much whether or not you have Jamar Chase, because he probably would have been limited either way, but now you have no Joe Mixon. He's already confirmed out. So you have a depleted running game, having really only Samaje Perine back there, who they're not going to run up the A-gap anyways, and you're facing the best rush defense in the NFL. There's literally no point why you shouldn't throw the ball 50 times this game, and I think that's great for both T. Higgins and for Joe Burrow. Now going over to another game that I'm interested in. All right, so we'll start with Tua first because Ray does like Tua. He likes Tua to go over 285.5 passing yards, which you see Tua has done in 2 of his last 5 games. The biggest problem for me is that the Houston Texans, for as bad as they are, and they are awful, they allowed 173 rushing yards per game over the last 5 games, and what does that mean for quarterbacks? Well, I'll tell you what it means. It means that they don't allow much of anything. And that's the biggest problem with this number, is that as much as I like Tua, the Texans are literally dead last in allowing passing yards to opposing quarterbacks. And that is not good. I think Tua is great. I think that Tyreek Hill is amazing. I think that Jalen Waddle is phenomenal. But I just can't bet on Tua going over this number. I mean, there's literally no reason why they should have to pass the ball hardly at all. Yeah, Kyle Allen's going to be in. They finally benched Davis Mills. Hallelujah. So maybe they have a slightly better offense, but this game still may not be competitive simply because they can't stop the run. They've shown no semblance to be able to stop the run all year long. They get run on about 31 times a game for 173 yards per game just from running backs over the past 5 games, 5.5 a carry. That is wretched. That is so bad. And that's the main reason why I'm very much considering Jeff Wilson Jr. 80.5 sounds like a lot, but it's literally less than half a yard to running backs per game. We know it's going to be a lot of Jeff Wilson, a lot of Raheem Mostert. I was in on Brian Robinson last week. Unfortunately, he didn't get the carries to get the over, but he was basically right there from a yards per carry standpoint. And so that's the biggest problem, is that 80.5 sounds like a lot. Against the Texans, it's not. If he gets, 17, 18 carries, he's going over. I talk about this all the time. Running backs who get 20 carries against the Texans have got no less than 143 rushing yards in any of those contests. And if you bump that number down to 17, I believe that number shoots all the way up, unless Antonio Gibson had 17 carries last week. But before that, it was Miles Sanders had the lowest yardage output at 17 plus carries with 93 yards. And Jeff Wilson will absolutely be able to beat that number. It just comes down to volume. Are they going to pass the ball? Are they going to run the ball? I don't really know. It's one of the biggest problems without having a bell cow versus the Texans, where Jeff Wilson is getting the majority share of the carries and got that last week. I just don't know if I fully trust him. Not trust him, but trust the offense, trust the opportunities, be confident in what's going to be coming his direction in this game. So for me, if it's anything, I would take a 2 under over instead of an over. I can't do that. Jeff Wilson, you definitely don't take an under for him. You'd want to go over. I get 80.5, sounds like a lot. Let's see what it is on the books, actually. I believe it's right around there. And oh yeah, it's the one I can't search for whatever reason, but either way, it's still at 80.5 last time I checked it, so it's probably right around there. It seems so high, but he's literally coming off a game where I believe he just had 117 yards. So from that standpoint, it's like, what am I so afraid of? 119 yards versus Cleveland. What am I afraid of? What am I afraid of? And if you want his receiving yards, actually, you want to talk about a number that's been good lately? 3 for 3 since he came to Miami. 3 for 3. So I do like this one too. Jeff Wilson to go over his receiving yards. But again, the problem is the opportunities. It's not the talent. It's just, is he going to get the opportunities to warrant an over like this? That's my biggest problem with him, but I do still really like the play. And I will kind of recap all my plays when I go over this. But I want to kind of highlight a few that I do like. This is probably the most egregious of all. This one, Donovan Peoples-Jones at 41.5 receiving yards, is probably one of the most egregious lines I've ever seen in my whole life. Look at how easily he's cleared it every week. And even last week, he did it in garbage time against Buffalo. It was like, I was hanging on for dear life when he was, 2 minutes left. I'm like, get the ball to DPJ, get the ball to DPJ. But every week, this guy continues to get it done. Now, again, there is a little bit of weather concerns because it is going to be raining. It probably rains the entire game. But outside of that, it still looks like a good play. Versus Tampa Bay, Tampa Bay's been kind of average in terms of allowing passing yards to opposing quarterbacks and receiving yards to wide receivers. So at worst, it's a neutral matchup. Maybe it's a favorable game script if Tampa Bay gets up in this one. We know that Leonard Fournette's not going to play, so we should see a lot of Rachaad White. So we'll see how his lines ultimately shake out. Another guy you could look at actually is Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk does look pretty good, although I haven't really done a whole lot of research into him. But the reason why Brandon Ayuk could be good is because George Kittle could be on underwatch. He's up against the league's best or the second best tight end defense in the NFL, even with Pete Werner out. The Saints still only allowed 44 yards to Tyler Higbee, who had 8 targets last week and had 4 receptions. So Kittle, after having a monster game versus Arizona, the worst defense in the league to tight ends, now faces one of the best. And so he could be a guy who goes under. I hope that line would come in a little bit higher. Unfortunately, it didn't. But that's just kind of how it goes sometimes. You're hoping for a higher number for Kittle, but he has a really bad matchup, so the bookmakers didn't move it a ton. So I'm not necessarily going to be going there. Another great matchup I do love, though, Terry McLaurin. How do you not love Terry McLaurin and his 30% target share with Taylor Heineke? It's just, I love it, man. You see this over in 3 of his last 5 games, come very close in the 2 games that he did miss, 55 plus yards. Again, one of those versus Houston, when, again, you just don't have to pass for them to beat them. You just don't. And that's the biggest problem with Tyreek and with Waddle and with Tua, is that you just don't have to pass. And the Commanders were passing a ton. Oh, I was just kicking myself not seeing them hand it off to Brian Robinson. But yeah, you see 56 yards. But to this week, he has the Falcons. The Falcons are literally the worst defense in the NFL, I believe, to wide receivers. So let's see where they rank. They're third. So they're allowing 199 yards per game to wide receivers since week 7. So over the past month, they are still egregiously bad. I believe on the season, they are dead last in the NFL allowing yards to wide receivers. The only team that allows 200 yards to receivers per game. If that number still stands, it's been like that for a while. They're right on the edge, right around 200 yards a game is what they've been allowing. So it is possible that they're still there. You see, Pittsburgh 202. So they're 188 on the season. They've actually been worse and were better in the year. But yeah, Terry McLaurin over 60.5 is one from one of our Discord members, Dave. Shout out to Dave. Dave does a lot of good stuff. He's a really good capper, and I do like his stuff and respect him a lot. But this is one that he put on my radar, and I wanted to highlight with all you guys because it is a great line. He's also on Tyler Lockett. I haven't seen the research for Tyler Lockett, but I know obviously that the Raiders are abysmal. They are really bad. So you don't need to look too far when it comes to the Raiders. One of the things I did notice for them is I believe they allow a lot to the slot. 8th worst in slot yards out wide. I believe they're a little bit stronger, so they're more beatable in the slot. You see they're 24th versus wide receivers, and they are 8th against the slot, so they are much more favorable to face when you're facing against the slot. So I do think that Tyler Lockett would be the primary target here. They probably play a lot of zone coverage, and of course, that lends itself to Tyler Lockett as well. So there are some good things to like with Lockett here. I know he's on Lockett. I'm not all the way there yet, but it is one that is interesting to me. When I saw him talk about it, I was like, yeah, it makes sense. His biggest game obviously came against Arizona because it always does. But 63.5 is a little bit higher than I was hoping for. But against Vegas, I mean, more than doable. So talking about the ones that we kind of highlighted here, Joe Burrow, I love this play. I think it's one of the best ones on the slate in terms of passing yard overs. Joe Burrow just kills bad defenses, has all year, and I think he continues to do that this week. T. Higgins as well, I love. I know that Ray likes Tua. We'll see if he decides to come on video after he gets back from Thanksgiving and make his case. I kind of made mine as to why I don't like it. Terry McLaurin over, has to be a core play, love it. Tyler Lockett's interesting. George Kittle is one that I was looking at, but I'm probably not going to play. But I think the data is there to support an under. We talked about Jeff Wilson and why I like his over. It just comes down to workload and whether or not I trust him to get that work. I'm not all the way there, man. Houston's just, they're so bad. They're one of those teams you can beat no matter how you play them, whether you want to throw the ball, whether you want to run the ball. They've just been getting absolutely destroyed running the ball all year long. So outside of that, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I was looking at that I had wanted to highlight to you guys. But those are kind of the main ones I was looking at overall. Let me see what else there is here that I was looking at earlier. I was looking at a Pirine under. I don't believe PrizePicks has given that out. But if you see Pirine's rushing yards, anywhere under 45.5 or 44.5. Those are the main lines on the books right now. Again, I showed you guys the data. Tennessee's only allowing 44 yards per game on the ground anyways. I think they abandon the run. I think there's no way Pirine gets to 44 unless he breaks a big play, which happens from time to time, but I think the volume will be pretty low for Pirine. So I think these are the plays you want to look at overall. I think, a Tua under at 285 is definitely in play. T. Higgins over 70.5. Joe Burrow over 275.5. I like that stack. Terry McLaurin at 60.5. And then I mentioned, like Jeff Wilson is a big one that you think you could play him. And then you have one of the worst matchups that I'm so frustrated that we don't get a better number is that I'm trying to think of who the Chargers play. Let me see. They play, Arizona is the one. So you have James Conner, and he was another one I'm like, 65.5 is so doable for James Conner. So doable now that Kyler Murray is coming back. Hollywood Brown's supposed to be back. We'll see if Greg Dortch is looking like he's going to be out. Rondell Moore is out. So we probably see a lot of James Conner in this one with Kyler coming off injury. And, we'll see how much he actually runs, how effective he can be. But up against the league's worst Chargers, it's always a prop that I like to target. And then tight ends versus Arizona. But the problem is, who's it going to be? Is Gerald Everett even active? I'm pretty sure he's still hurt with his groin injury, which means you're getting backup tight ends. A lot of murky situations. Don't really know what to do there. So just wanted to give you guys some food for thought of some picks that I'm playing today. Again, the core plays, in my opinion, would be Terry McLaurin over 60.5 receiving yards versus the Falcons. T. Higgins over 70.5 receiving yards versus the Tennessee Titans. Joe Burrow 275.5 over for that one as well. And then any of the other ones are kind of flex viable options. I did take the Pirine under on the books. George Kittle, again, one that I was looking at earlier. And then Donovan Peoples-Jones over 41.5 receiving yards is one I think I accidentally dropped out of here. But that's the core play for me. Even with the rain, I think you got to play it. It's the only problem for me is I can't ladder it this week. Last week we hit the ladder up pretty high, so that was pretty good money for us. But as always, if you tail, give PrizePicks hell, and if we fail, do not bail. Make sure to drop me a like and subscribe for future content. Gave you guys a lot of lines to look at. I will post it in the comments as well what the core plays are and maybe a little bit of analysis of why I like them, and then some flex viable options I did discuss in this video as well. A little bit longer than I wanted it to be this time around, but I wanted to give you plenty of plays, plenty of picks, things I was looking at today, and things that I am going to be playing this weekend. As always, have a great weekend, everybody. Good luck, and we'll see you guys on Monday Night Football. I'm out. Peace.